In this tutorial, we're going to talk about scaling. Let me go ahead and take the rectangle tool and draw a square on my artboard. What I'm doing now is holding down the Alt and the Shift keys together, and that will allow me to draw my shape from the center. So what if I want to increase the size or decrease the size of the square? Now obviously, as we've seen in other tutorials, what I can do is just go back to the selection tool and basically see these corners and then hover on one of those corners and then stretch the element up or down. Now doing so without holding down the Shift key will prevent me from keeping the proportion of this element. So now I'm not holding down the Shift key, and as you can see, my square is transforming to a rectangle, to a vertical rectangle, because obviously my hand is shaking and I can't hit the proportion, the exact proportion of the square. To keep the proportion, we just need to hold down the Shift key, and then our element can scale up or down while still remaining a square. Now, the other way to scale up or down is just use the scale tool. The scale tool is the letter S or this element right here. So if I hit S, I will get to the scale tool. Now, what I need to do next is just hit Enter. And this dialog box will show up. Now, what does this mean and what is it saying? You can see at the top where it says scale, it says uniform and non-uniform. But other than that, you see this value 100%. What does 100% mean? It means that my current square is at 100%, right? That's what I currently have, my exact size of my element. That's 100%. So if I wish to increase the size of this square, I just need to add values over 100%. If I need to decrease the size of my square, I enter values under 100%, like 90, 80, and so forth. In this case, I want to increase the size of my square by 200%. And what that will mean is I basically want to increase the size of my square twice as big as it currently is. So the only thing I need to do is just add 200% right here. And that's it. I don't need to worry about non-uniform because non-uniform applies to cases where I want to change the size of my element disproportionately, either the width or the height. In this case, I just want to keep my square but make it twice as big, so I'll hit OK. If I wish to copy my square, then I hit copy. For this exercise, I just want to hit OK, and then you'll see a square which is twice the size of the original square. Now, if you noticed, what happened is that our square increased in size from the center. But what if I want to increase the size of my square from one of its angles and not from the center? Let's say I have a composition like this. This is my square, and then next to it and under it I have 3 other squares that are in green. Okay, I wish to increase the size of my square as of this angle, as of this lower left angle, and I don't want to increase it into the other 3 squares. So how do I do that? I select my red square and then hit S to go to the scale tool. And now instead of hitting enter, which takes me to the dialog box, I will just hover over the angle that I want, in this case the lower left angle, and then hold down the Alt key, as you can see now. Let me show you outside on the white artboard. If I hold down the Alt key, you will see this dotted minus sign next to the cross. So that means that the Alt key has been held down. So again, I'll hover over the bottom left angle, hold down the Alt key, and then click. When I do this, the dialog box opens. And again, in this case, I can enter the value that I want. So if I wish to increase the size of my square, let's say by 50%, I will enter the value 150% in the uniform option, and then hit OK. And what will happen is that my square increases in size as of that lower left corner. Now what if I wish to increase or decrease the width or the height of my element, but not the whole element proportionally. Again, while I'm on the scale tool, I hit enter and this dialog box appears. So far we've been working under uniform because uniform will increase or decrease the size of my element proportionally. Now I need to work under non-uniform. The first thing I need to do is change the value of uniform to 100% because I do not wish to work with uniform since uniform is scaling up or down my element proportionally. So I want to keep the current size of my element at 100% and then hit the tab key to move to non-uniform. In this case, I wish to change the square that I currently have into a rectangle, which means increase its width and not its height. That will actually tell me that I need to add values to the horizontal tab right here. So let's say I say 50% more than the current size. My current size was at 100%. So if I say 150% only for the horizontal and nothing for vertical, it means that my square will horizontally or in width increase 50%. Let me see if I'm right. There you go. So my square increased in width 50%. Similarly, if you wish to work with the vertical option instead of the horizontal, you can go ahead and do that. The best way is, based on this tutorial, learn how the scale tool works and then practice on your own a bit, making vertical changes, horizontal changes, or just proportional uniform changes to the element that you have. Also remember that if you hit Command D, which we covered in earlier tutorials, what you did in your earlier step gets duplicated. So I'm holding down actually the Command key and then clicking the D letter once. Okay? So you see we had our rectangle increase by 50% in width, and now it increased even more, 50%. What I'm doing again, let me remind you, holding down the Command key and hitting the D, like Daniel, key on my keyboard. So I'm going to keep doing that, okay? And the more I click, the more the previous step is duplicated. Now, or repeated, if you will. Now let me delete this element and show you what else I can do with the scale tool. I'm going to go under the rectangle tool and choose a star in this case and draw a star on my artboard. I'm again holding down the Alt and Shift keys to draw my shape from the center. And what I want to do is change the fill to a stroke. So I wish to swap, which I'll do by clicking on this little arrowed icon. And then I want to go to the scale tool, select it, and hit enter. Now what I want to do is copy this star several times, but in bigger sizes. So I want to go under uniform and change the value to, let's say, 140%, hit the tab key so that all values are alike. You don't want your horizontal to say 150%, your vertical to say 100%. If you're increasing an element proportionally, which means you're using uniform, whatever value you enter under uniform, just hit the tab key and then that value will be applied to horizontal and vertical, which means it's increasing in size horizontally and vertically uniformly. Okay, so now instead of hitting OK, I'm going to hit copy, and that will give me a bigger star by 40%. Now, since we know that if we keep duplicating this element, we keep having the same step repeated over and over again. So I want to hold down the Command key and then click D and D and D and D and so forth. So you can have, draw effects, do whatever you like, just by increasing the size of an element and then holding down the Command key and duplicating several times to get to the result that you wish.